Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this nice, warm, balmy August evening's speaker series presentation of the Jacksonville Historical Society. As always, our speaker series presentations are made possible by the generous support of Retina Associates, Drs. Fred Lambro and Mansour Mughal. We also appreciate the support of the Cultural Council of Greater Jacksonville and the City of Jacksonville, and the many generous donors and supporters, businesses, foundations that help underwrite our activities, our ongoing work in Jacksonville's public history. And we also appreciate the support of many of you who are members of the Jacksonville Historical Society. If you are currently a member, thank you. And we're very grateful for your ongoing engagement with our work. If you are not yet a member, we would be happy to share with you some more information about the benefits of membership. We have recently been elevating the rewards of membership in the JHS, and information about that is available on our website at www.jackshistory.org. We have a lot going on at the Historical Society these days, and I would just like to briefly mention that we have about completed the removal of all the contents of our casket factory building. That's the 3-story red brick building right next to the Historical Society's offices downtown, nestled on the scenic bank of Hogan's Creek. With the support of a major gift from a generous donor, we are prepared to commence demolition and renovation on the construction projects. We'll be making an announcement very soon about that gift. I'd also like to share a little information about the upcoming program. Our September program will be on, do I have it right, Kate? It's September 23rd. All right, and the program presentation that month, that evening will be from Jada Wright Green, an author. She is the author of the very recently published Florida's Historic African American Homes. That's new this year from Arcadia Press's Images of America series. And that'll be a program that I think we can all look forward to. Interesting, innovative, and resourceful, with a generous dose of Jacksonville history thrown in. All the things that we try to seek out and emphasize in the Jacksonville Historical Society Speaker Series programming. And that's what we'll find tonight. And to welcome our speaker, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Dr. David Jamison. Dr. Jamison is a professor of history at Edward Waters University, formerly known as Edward Waters College. Congratulations to them at EWU on the evolution of that institution. Dr. Jamison, I'm honored to say, in addition to being my colleague in history, is also a board member of the Jacksonville Historical Society, and he chairs our programs committee. I'm so grateful to him for his work in helping promote these speaker series activities, and for his service to the JHS and to Jacksonville's historic community more generally. Dr. Jamison, if you would take it from here, welcome to you, and we'll leave it to you to welcome our guest speaker this evening.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Dr. Bliss. Hello, members of the Jacksonville Historical Society and fans of history in general. I have the pleasure today to present to you Dr. John Foster, who for many years has been bringing interesting insight into the history of tourism in Florida. Controversial to some, but his research is sound. He is a proud graduate of Florida State University. He had a bachelor's degree in anthropology, combined major in social studies and anthropology, and then he got a master's in anthro as well. And then he got a doctorate in the design of post-secondary education. For those who are a little shaky on that was an aspiration of mine as well. Anthropology is the study of mankind, and history is a study of the written word. So when people started writing, that's where anthropology stopped and history began. So he sort of studies the old and the sort of basic nature of humanity. And as I was saying, the his books document the efforts of abolitionists to create a place of genuine freedom for all Americans. And he's written a few books on it. At the Dawn of Tourism in Florida, Abolitionist Print Media and Images for Early Vacationers, Calling Yankees to Florida, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Forgotten Tourist Articles. And so Dr. Foster has decided to, he's a member of the Florida Historical Society, and he's decided to grace us here at the Jacksonville Historical Society. So very welcome and excited and interesting on this topic. Dr. Foster, welcome. And you can take it from here, the real origins of Florida tourism.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jameson. My life is something of a bunch of paradoxes. As the piece that Kate published about my talk and my background, I was in 7 schools in 7 years. This is a track record that can lead to the destruction of a child, or the child can rise above all of this chaos. And somebody in the 1960s discovered and wrote, and this was a man by the name of McKinnon, that architects who are very creative had that kind of background. Multiple schools, very fast time. In fact, my mother taught me how to read at the end of the 3rd grade. And so there you have it, all over the place. And in fact, my father was an architect, and I spent half of my senior year in an architectural office down at Jacksonville Beach. And I ended it by rejecting architecture. So let's turn to tourism. What has been in Florida history for most of at least 30 some years was an idea put out by Dr. Gary Mormino. This was published in the Florida Handbook in 1989, and I have one on my desk from 2003 and 4 that still refers to that history statement. What Dr. Mormino said was that tourism in Florida comes in 3 periods: the 1880s with Henry Flagler and Henry Plant, in the 1920s, and then after World War II. Well, my stuff and my wife's dealt with a period before this, the 1880 hypothesis. And before that, Mormino said that travel to Florida was expensive, it was slow, it was difficult, it was hard to arrange. Well, there are a few problems with Dr. Mormino's generalization. Number 1, Florida was featured 10 times in Harper's New Monthly in the 1870s. Now, Harper's New Monthly might mean not a lot to you, but it was probably in at least half of the middle-class families in this country, and it was known internationally. And one of the things that made Harper so popular is highly illustrated with lithographs. And so if you turn to other magazines, Florida's there too, but Harper's featured Florida 7 times before 1872. It was also in Appleton's Journal and Scribner's Monthly. Now, the stuff in Scribner's and in Appleton's also was recycled into tour books. And one of these tour books gave an immense prominence to Florida. So who starts tourism in Florida? The answer is Harriet Beecher Stowe and William Cullen Bryant working as a team. So going back then, the other thing that the 1880 hypothesis misses are the descriptions of tourism from the 1870s. The New York Times in October 1874 said that there were 50,000 tourists in Florida last season. That was not alone. The Christian Union said it was 40,000. But the state in 1870 didn't have 190,000 residents. So can you imagine that many tourists turned loose in Florida? They packed up every hotel. People were getting space in the floors of the dining room during the night. People who had a spare bedroom would put a sign in the window, "Spare bedroom for rent." And so tourists were everywhere in the state, especially along the St. Johns River and in Jacksonville and in St. Augustine. So one of the things I want to do in a little while is, in fact, show you some of the images, because all of these are highly illustrated. Now, one of the things you need to know about Harriet Beecher Stowe is she's famous now, but no one knows exactly the high regard she was held in her lifetime. Uncle Tom's Cabin was translated into 22 languages before her death. Now that includes the obvious ones like French and German, but it also includes Welsh. It includes, would you believe, something called Wallachian? I'm probably mispronouncing it. That's a dialect used in Romanian. It was translated into Hindustani, into Serbian, into Hebrew, and so forth. So the conclusion was that Uncle Tom's Cabin was, in fact, the most circulated novel in the 19th century. So nobody alive today has the regard that Stowe had in her life. You need to be thinking of somebody like Gandhi. You need to be thinking about somebody like Nelson Mandela. That's the stature that she held. And so if you think of Jane Austen writing popular books, if you're thinking about Victor Hugo, these people aren't anything compared to Stowe. Now I want to make one brief point about Uncle Tom. There were like 10,000 plays based on this book, and in many of them, he is shown as a complete meek and subservient Christian man. That is not completely true at all. Some of the last things he says in the book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, is, "I can die," because he will not tell Simon Legree the location of two women who are hiding, who are running away. And at that point, Simon Legree has Uncle Tom beaten to a pulp. "I can die." Well, William Cullen Bryant also had quite a reputation. He was an owner and an editor of the Washington Post, not Washington, but the New York Post. By the way, it still exists. In any case, he owned part of it. The other thing he did is he wrote poetry. In his life, he, in his era, was the second most popular poet, short of Longfellow. Okay? And there is some of his poetry that is still cited in recent times. One of the people who did was Martin Luther King Jr., who liked a particular part of what William Cullen Bryant wrote. And the thing is, it says, "Truth crushed to earth will rise again." Truth crushed to earth will rise again. That's what this is about. Because these two people were working together. Her family and William Cullen Bryant had worked together in the topic of making a free state in Kansas. So we're going back to the 1850s. And the organization was called the Immigrant Aid Company, or the New England Immigrant Aid Company. It serviced an office in Boston, offices in Kansas. It set up a newspaper helping to move people out there. William Cullen Bryant was a director of this company. Calvin Stowe owned stock in the company. People who ran the company wanted him to endorse the company through a piece that would be circulated to newspapers. Calvin Stowe wrote one to be used in lots of newspapers. But would you believe Lyman Beecher wrote one for even wider circulation? These people were endorsing freedom and they're trying to establish it. Well, the Civil War comes along, freedom becomes a reality out there. The issue became a place of freedom in Florida. Because of all the southern states, this is the most empty one. And at the same time, the population was almost evenly black and white. The black population was outnumbered by less than 5,000 residents. So it doesn't take many people to come to Florida, and you can in fact settle them out, which is the term that was used in Kansas. So after the war, they set up an office in Jacksonville. They purchased a newspaper to run. They sent a man to do it, a man by the name of Edward Cheney. The newspaper, would you believe, was the Florida Union. No, you've never heard of that, have you? Except this was being used to, in fact, circulate information. Now, in Kansas, they sold land to people who were coming. In Florida, they set up, well, it was, in fact, an office to exchange information about property. And so, lo and behold, in 1868, it may have been 7, a large farm on the south side of Jacksonville was sold through Edward Cheney to John Murray Forbes. I've seen it at one point said it was for $10,000 in gold, and another one it was in $20,000 in gold. But this, in fact, really happened. So what am I talking? I'm talking about Riverside. This is where it begins, changing from a farm or a plantation to a place where people live. Edward Cheney's house, I believe, still stands there. And John Murray Forbes had built a large house. He was one of the wealthiest men in all of New England. By the way, he was the president of the Immigrant Aid Company. So these people are working together. And the idea was that you can create a genuine place of freedom, and it can be in Florida. And guess where freedom really existed? In Jacksonville. And accounts of it can be found in the autobiography of James Weldon Johnson. Johnson saw freedom as a child. He described multiracial events he saw. Try to visit a former President Grant. A Black woman went down to the platform. The platform was covered with Black and white people. There was a space for General Grant to come off of the train. And this woman, a Black woman, dashes across the space, kisses him on a cheek, gets down on her knees and hands him a bouquet of flowers. So later on, guess who's emboldened to shake his hand? Johnson shook his hand. So guess what James Weldon Johnson observed? That he experienced freedom as a young person, as a child in Jacksonville, and as an adult in France. So he goes on to talk about Jacksonville in the 1880s, of a judge being Black, of a lot of the policemen being Black, a lot of the firemen are Black. All the barber shops were run by Blacks. There was even a group of people who were purchasing agents for the steamship companies. And so these people were getting the supplies that no doubt the Clyde Line and other ship companies wanted. Blacks were arranging this. Now this all disappears around the turn of the century. And James Weldon Johnson wanted to know what happened to it. But in any case, freedom was real. And would you believe the lyrics for Lift Every Voice and Sing were composed in Jacksonville, approximately at 1900. Now, all of this tourist stuff attracted a large number of people, and it continued to do so. So I'd like to show you what the images of it looked like. Second chapter in Picturesque America, the tour book, the first one, the second chapter was Florida's Rivers and Springs. And so let's see some. Here you go. This is from Harper's New Monthly. How does that look like? Our boat. Next one, please, lady. Do you recognize this place? Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Try Jacksonville. Look at all the wood floating and the lumber for all the sawmills that were a major industry other than tourism. Look at the railroad trains down there on the waterfront. What's the hotel? Is that the Grand Union? I'm not sure. But isn't that a trip? Next one, lady. You're looking at palm trees along the river. Note this is Scribner's. By the way, I'm also telling you where they can be found. All these things are online. So you can go online, find Scribner's Monthly, go to November, and I'm using 44, 46 images. I found 160 images in the 3 magazines. 160. I'm only using part of it. Next one, lady. Harriet Beecher Stowe's house. You ought to recognize that, Sandy. Holy ground. Next one, please. Green Cove Springs. Doesn't look like that now. Next one. On the banks of the Ocklawaha. But this is what a person looking at Scribner's would have expected to see when they came to Florida. And so it's not only the men reading the articles, even the children could see the images. Picturesque America, 2 volumes, was featured at the American Centennial and the French World Fair in Paris in 1878. The 2 volumes have 900 images. Okay, next please. How about that one? Waiting for decomposition.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like it could be along a road somewhere in the backwoods of Florida. Next one, please. This is removing a tree obstructing the Ocklawaha. Appleton's Journal. Next one. These are people making shingles. So this is a cypress shingle yard. Appleton's Journal. Next one, please. How about that one? Scribner's. Please, the next one, Kate. Aha, post office on the Ocklawaha. Can you see the box there on the cypress tree? Next, please. I think this one raises to the level of fine art. 2 black children on the Ocklawaha. I didn't know there were any there, but in any case, there were. Fine looking young lads. Next one, please. Here is a person being poked by a branch along the Ocklawaha. Look at the black man up in the wheelhouse, kind of smiling. There was also one that Harriet Beecher Stowe would have become furious at. This is men shooting from the boat's decks. That exists too. So if you want to see it, I can tell you where to find it. Scribner's. This is where it ends. Silver Springs. Was that on the tip of your tongue? Once upon a time. It's a shame it doesn't look like that now. Well, let's do another one. Tours. This is all going to be St. Augustine. And I can tell you every image in this group is not in the state's archives. Keep in mind, Henry Flagler didn't build the first railroad in Florida. The Astor family may have. But they did this on the cheap. Flagler went big and expensive. The Astors are cheap millionaires. So the cars here are pulled by mules, horses. Next one, please. Notice this is a bridge into St. Augustine. If you can see the edges of it, you can see logs there. What they did is they made a pile of logs across this place, and then they put wood planks on top and then the rails on top of that. Isn't that an interesting system? Which means that you had to cross it going as slow as possible, and the thing shook from the weight of the locomotive. Next one, please. How's that one? Isn't that pretty nifty? This is from Picturesque America or Appleton's Journal. Again, you can find the sources. Next, please. The city gates. Next one, please. This, of course, is St. Francis Street. Next, please. St. Francis Street again, Appleton's Journal. Look at the date on that. But you could go to some of these places from the tour thing and actually go there today. Next, please. Cathedral. Next, please. This is a side view of the cathedral. And you can see up in the bell tower, there's a man ready to use a hammer on a bell. Way up there at the top. There's also one of nuns going into a door, which I didn't show, I didn't use, but could have. Somebody else might have preferred the next one, please. You know what this is? Formidable if you're down at the level of the water. Next one, please. This is the bridges into the fort. But you could go there. Most of these places still exist. Next, please. How about that one? And some of these images were produced by nationally known artists. Harry Finn did a lot of these images. He was well known, and Appleton's employed him. They estimate Appleton spent $100,000 on artists to create the images for their books. Can you imagine $100,000 in 1870? Next, please. This, of course, is the Coquina Quarry. Notice in the background is the old lighthouse, the original lighthouse. Now, the archives have some photographs of this that are fuzzy and hard to see, but this is the way it was drawn for Appleton's and appears in Picturesque America. Next, please. And again, here is the lighthouse. This is the version in Scribner's. Nifty, isn't it? Okay. Are there any questions so far? I'm rolling along like an old fool on the move. Don't hesitate to ask at any point. And if you want me to go back to some of these, I can't. As a young person, I developed a hatred for a teacher that came in with 3 slides and talked about each one of them for a half an hour. And so I prefer to move on images. This is tropical Florida. This is based on 5 chapters in Harper's that featured tropical Florida. Next, please. Mouth of the Miami River. Doesn't that look like Miami to you? Next. Key Biscayne. Isn't that interesting spelling down there at the bottom of that? Busquine. I think I'm reading that. Next, please. Royal Palms. Next, please. Date palms. Notice the ships back on the horizon. Next, please. All of these images on this area are all Harper's. Bananas. Next, please. One of the houses of one of the Black workers. This is Uncle George's cabin. Next, please. Fort Taylor, Key West. Next. Mangrove Swamp. Next. White Egret, again from Harper's New Monthly. Next, please. This is the cover thing I would have liked to have put on the cover of At the Dawn. So what is this? We see what's going on is the person at the top has a frame that's holding a piece of glass. So you're having the old-fashioned effects of Silver Springs, and you're looking at what's going on underneath, or Wakulla Springs back in the day. So you have somebody who's diving, and you can see the bottom of the water. And aren't the sharks fun and nice looking? But in any case, this is showing you how you could see under the water. Next, please. And this is what you might see. People oftentimes don't realize how big salvaging was for shipwrecks along the Florida coast for hundreds of years. Next, please. Bellows fish, shrimp. Next, please. More underwater things, plants. Next, please. This is the last one. How's this one for an image? How'd you like to be in a little boat and have a creature like this come up out of the water? The sea devil. Well, there you go.
Thank you so much. Health to everyone. We'll be in touch with you again soon.
Thank you.
Good night for now.